Most of us think, I'm glad somebody else will probably be called to do this. It won't be me because I'm not a spiritual giant. I'm not a theological giant. I am not feeling called to give up my life and to leave my home and my family. So it won't be me. I'm glad it's somebody. I hope somebody does it. And someday, maybe that hard-to-reach region will be turned around for Christ. I think that what the church needs to do is to begin to listen and be willing to create pathways, not based on old paradigms or fears or misconceptions, but open-handed and nimble in a way of moving people to the right place. It is a unique region. It does take special training and preparation to some degree, but we've got to open up and begin to follow this growing opportunity worldwide. A church coming alongside an agenda, a political view, or a unique culture to try and save some aspect of humanity, that opinionated, side-taking aspect of partnership is not bringing a Christ who loves all people into the space. So it's good to understand the sides, and it's good to walk with those who are experiencing life on the sides, but to choose to take a political position to react to these things in a way that's public or adversarial is not helping. I feel like when I look at those who say, I want to be a part of that ministry in the Middle East, I look at churches and I'm wondering, are you the side takers? Are you the balanced Jesus followers who understand that people at the heart level can be ministered to? I may feel like Middle East type ministries are really for the select few, but the truth is most people in the church think missionary work is also still for a select few. It's a little bit bigger swath of people, but maybe 80% in the church, well, we're never going to be called to that. And the fact is, every single one of us is a witness for Jesus. Every one of us in a childlike lifestyle of obedience for the right reasons can be a missionary, if you will, wherever we are.
Right. Brian Heerwagen, welcome to the Ferris Abraham podcast. I'm so excited about our conversation today.
I'm very glad for the invitation. There's a lot to say, a lot to look forward to. So,
yes. Well, let's start here. You come from a business background. You have a degree in business and organizational leadership. That's a language I speak. And I think this is why we connected right away. We just clicked when we met a couple of years ago. You now lead MissionWorks, which is, if I put it in my own words, it's an organization that provides resources, training programs to help the church engage in mission with excellence. So you provide a platform not only for individuals who feel called to serve, but also for churches, organizations seeking to recruit, equip, support missionaries. And that's just an amazing work that you're doing. You work also with so many different partners and organizations to highlight what God is doing and to highlight the Great Commission in our generation. But before we talk about where MissionWorks is today and the wonderful work that you're doing around the world, let's go back to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about you. One of the things I admire about you is your journey, you're just a man of great leadership, and a lot of people, get excited about missions for a season sometimes, but maybe after a trip or an inspiring conference, that passion fades away. But Brian, you've been consistent. Looking back, what first stirred in your heart for missions, and what has kept that fire burning for missions?
Well, it did really start in junior high and high school, somewhere, somehow, and I just trust it was the Lord that inspired my thinking with this. But I began to realize that people, didn't matter where they come from or what they're going through in their families or whatever, inside, somewhere deep inside, have something going on that's like what I do. We all long to be loved or appreciated or accepted or seen or heard. And there's just this other reality that is lying underneath all the stuff that we think we see and know. And so even back in those days, I just thought I really wanted people to see more that way, not just look at the outside. And so for me, there was this growing desire to show people or influence or affect people, to help them be the best version of themselves, which was understanding the inside before they were preoccupied or obsessed with issues of the outside. In 1982 was when the call first came to really engage in a leadership or organizational role related to missions. And so it all kind of rolls up through a life learning and then a calling and a place to engage in.
Where was your first mission trip that you took?
Oh, it's in the state of Oregon. And then following that, it was 3 summers in Mexico, down in the Guadalajara area.
I'll never forget when we first met in Egypt. That was a few years ago. We were at a conference right outside Cairo that gathered pastors and leaders, about 400 of them from different parts of the Middle East and North Africa. And for me, that gathering showed how diverse and yet interconnected the global church really is. The Middle East, in particular, is a region people often see through the lens of conflict or headlines. But when you were on the ground in Egypt, you saw something different. You see believers living faithfully. You see churches growing, communities, maybe also wrestling with suffering and hope, and powerful witness of the gospel in the midst of difficulty.
Absolutely.
Brian, can you share with our audience what was your experience like the first time you traveled to the Middle East?
Well, in many ways, you just summed up something that describes how I observed and experienced the people there. And it's a lot like what my original feelings and call were in mission. They're all experiencing much the same on the inside. I was also aware of how much the media has influenced what I thought I knew. And in some cases, it's right, perhaps even more extreme than in some of the things I've learned. In other places, it's just, it's too much and too fabricated. And in any case, I watched people who are diving deeper underneath all of that to affect people at the heart level. I've found people of great talent, a lot of education, a real zeal or passion, literally a passion for the lost at any cost. And it is not just like a few, but I found it everywhere, even among the young people. We went to Upper Egypt among other groups of people outside of what I would have seen in Cairo and found more of the same. Circumstances affect everyone, but I found more of the same, the zeal, the hope, the passion, the talent, the education. They're all here.
So did that in any way, that trip, shape your understanding of God's mission in some of the most complex parts of the world?
Well, I guess there's 2 things that I would think of. You bring up complex parts of the world, and I agree and disagree with that. I agree because of the facts, the literal circumstances that everyone's facing there. It is difficult, more than most of us who sit in our Western culture could understand. So yes, that is absolutely complex. But back again to what's going on under the skin, what's going on in the heart of men and women and children, those created in God's image aspects of a person, that I feel is far less complex than I thought it would be. I remember in some of my training about the cultural onion, most of us only get as far as that outer layer. It doesn't make you cry, and it's easy to pull off, and you think you got it all figured out. Each layer, deeper that you go, you find more and more feeling, more and more value and behavior issues. You may have heard that as an analogy for culture. What I saw there was most of us make our decisions based on the outer layer of the onion, and then I hung out with people who live on the inner layers. I saw what they cry about. I actually felt like crying with them in some circumstances. But I also realized that we can do things together because of Christ, and we can either rise above or go deeper under the things that we're seeing in the media or that are factual to the region. So when it comes to the most complex regions, yes and no. I think one of the things that I find, especially Americans, but I think it's true in most Western cultures, the idea that we have to be incredibly intelligent and spiritual giants to go up against those who claim to be of the Islamic faith. I found out that that is not actually the case. I also felt that everyone that could call themselves a Muslim has done something very intentional, and it's an educated choice, and it's deeply religious and ingrained. Well, that's not actually the case either. So it's not like only a few select spiritual giants can do outreach or make a difference, but ordinary
So
people
it's
like
not
me.
that hard to really build bridges and to start relationships with others.
It can be hard if we're distracted by circumstances, or if we go in feeling in some way we have to manipulate and also know everything.
Yeah.
If we come in to just live, and if central
Mhm.
and naturally in our behavior, it's all about love, then it's not a question of can I build a bridge or not. It's just people being with people, and doors will open.
Right. I mean, people are people, as you said, and they have their own challenges. They want to raise a family. They have struggles with their children. Young people even have their own dreams and ambitions, and I find so many different similarities uh, between people's characteristics. I mean, the way they live and the way they want to find purpose in life, the way they relate to one another. But the thing is, Brian, whenever I travel to speak at churches in the United States, at conferences even, I run into a common barrier: misconceptions. Many Christians assume the Middle East is completely closed to the gospel, or they think of missions as one-way street or even a one-time trip where we bring Jesus to the people as though, Jesus is not already present and at work, as you said. Others imagine that all people in the region are hostile to Christians, which is, of course, we cannot deny that there are bad actors who desire to harm Christians in many places, like in Syria and in Nigeria, and so many people are trying kill Christians because they are Christians. But people usually imagine that everyone in the Middle East is bad, or that the church there no longer exists. Still, others reduce the region to nothing more than conflict and politics, overlooking the spiritual hunger of the people in the region. These misconceptions shape how people pray, they shape how people give, they shape even how people, whether they go. Helping people move past stereotypes is one of the biggest challenges and one of the greatest opportunities. So, from your experience, Brian, what are some of the most common misconceptions, and how do we help people move beyond them?
So I've summarized a couple of them a bit, and then you've touched on them a bit, but it's worth bringing it back together for anyone listening to this, because they are stereotypes and they are part of our worldview without us knowing it. The idea that you have to be a spiritual giant and be incredibly theologically nimble, the idea that it's only for those who are willing to die and it's forever. I will never see my family again if I go there. It all ties to these misconceptions that you're talking about it being hostile and dangerous. Yes, again, the circumstances are fact. They're real. There are terrible things happening, and it could be that where I go, it'll be terrible. But what it has done is it's isolated it down for most of us to think, I'm glad somebody else will probably be called to do this. It won't be me, because I'm not a spiritual giant. I'm not a theological giant. I am not feeling called to give up my life and to leave my home and my family. So it won't be me. I'm glad it's somebody. I hope somebody does it. And someday, maybe that hard-to-reach region will be turned around for Christ. I think that what the church needs to do is to begin to listen to all those who are feeling, and I honestly think there is the Holy Spirit at work around the world for people being raised up who are no longer thinking just that way. Somewhere on the inside, again, there's this stirring of, I could do this. And so I think the church needs to listen to that and be willing to create pathways, not based on old paradigms or fears or misconceptions, but open-handed and nimble in a way of moving people to the right place, but never with compromise. I keep saying that, no compromise. It is a
Right.
unique region. It does take special training and preparation to some degree, but we've got to open up and begin to follow this growing opportunity worldwide.
What about churches that can partner and empower the existing church in the Middle East? Have you seen that as a working, effective model?
Yes, absolutely. But here is something that's interesting. And if you're a church leader, I really think you need to pay attention to this aspect. a church coming alongside an agenda, a political view, or a unique culture to try and save some aspect of humanity, that opinionated, side-taking aspect of partnership is not bringing a Christ who loves all people into the space. So it's good to understand the sides, and it's good to walk with those who are experiencing life on the sides. But to choose to take a political position or a dramatic or reactionary, to react to these things in a way that's public or adversarial is not helping. That being said, I feel like when I look at those who say, I want to be a part of that ministry in the Middle East, I look at churches and I'm wondering, are you the side takers? Or are you the balanced Jesus followers who understand that people at the heart level can be ministered to? Ferris and I have talked with others from other regions who are parts of opposing sides, but each side choosing Jesus first and the care of the hearts of people is a way to enter in. And it's really hard not to get distracted by the sides. Even when Ferris and I have been talking to other sides, I've seen Ferris's blood pressure go up a little bit in some conversations, and likewise the others, because this is real stuff. And we care about justice. We care about all these things. But we have to keep ratcheting back to the heart of the matter, which is Christ on this very limited time on earth, that people would be able to enter into eternity. So that's a big answer to your question. I hope it sort of dials in where you want to be.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I want to also comment on the Mission Connection last year, the conference that you hold every January. I was very privileged, and I had the honor of coming to that conference, and you took a bold step. You invited me as a Palestinian Christian, and you also invited Dan Sered, my friend, an Israeli Messianic Jew, and he's also a leader with Jews for Jesus. You invited us to sit together on a panel. For many, that pairing might have felt surprising, even risky. But for those of us on stage, it was a powerful moment of modeling something the church desperately needs, which is an honest conversation, unity in Christ, and a willingness to step into spaces with humility and courage. And above all, as you said, presenting a gospel-centered message. So my question is, if you can tell us about that decision from your perspective, which took a lot of courage, and not a lot of churches are willing to even, open the platform for such conversation, because of just how polarizing it is. So what vision drove you, Brian, to do that? And what challenges did you have to overcome to make it happen?
Well, I'm going to sound like I'm repeating myself, but the heart of the matter always matters to me most. And that's Jesus and the condition of man's heart, where they are, where they live inside, right? So I keep bringing this up, but I met Dan from Israel a long time ago and found someone who shares that same view of people and Jesus. And in his ministry has sought, regardless of the fact that he serves in Israel and is a Jew and is converted or has come to know Messiah, his whole focus, while it relates to Jewish ministry, is back to the heart of man. And then I meet Ferris, who is the same way, but of course carrying a different banner, having been raised in another part of the Middle East. And now here are the two biggest in the news factions against each other, Israel and Gaza, which affects Palestinians and Jewish people. So I know these two men. I understand their character and their passion for biblical Christian response, but they never met each other. So I really wanted them to meet each other, but I also wondered, could we not show the world that this kind of maturity in faith and Jesus following is possible together on one stage? So it made sense, but I make it sound like, hey, I sat around and thought this up. I really think it was God breathed, and that the meetings were also anointed by the Lord, his good timing. Now, to your question, I actually got pushback early on, in part because this conference that we host, Mission Connection, It's a lot like honestly, our whole ministry feels a lot like Switzerland, where we remain neutral on purpose so that a lot of kinds of things can happen. We're bringing in two things that are known to be, as Ferris, you said, polarizing. And in fact, in a part of the world that is known for being volatile and reactionary compared to other countries like Japan, where everyone holds everything in, right? So what if this
Yes.
blows up? What if people in the audience get really mad at one of them or the other of them, or start shouting things or claiming that we don't know what we're talking about? What if it blows up? That was one of the things. I also was taken out to coffee a couple of times by different people, and also for a lunch by someone else who they were concerned and thought we shouldn't do this. And it's because they represented where they came from, and it was in the Middle East, and they were afraid of being misrepresented, of being pointed at. There were different concerns, and all of it again.
Yeah.
Why invite that kind of conflict into a space? But I just felt
Right.
like, knowing the two of you, we could do what you said, demonstrate Christ. So
Yes, absolutely. And people can find this this session, this panel. It was about 45 minutes, I believe. It was an hour. They can find it in the comments below, or in the description of the video. But that panel wasn't just about two speakers, Brian. It wasn't about just presenting, different worldviews. It was about two stories, two identities, two histories that often collide. But bringing us together wasn't only symbolic, it was prophetic, in my opinion. It
agreed.
said that the gospel is bigger than politics, bigger than division, and big enough to hold tension while still moving forward in love. And I know you didn't do it lightly. You wanted people to wrestle, to listen, and to imagine a different way of engaging mission in Palestine and in Israel. I mean, that's the whole point. We want to help the church move past these divisions and rise above the conflicts and rise above all the divisions and the things that we struggle with, and focus on a gospel-centered response. So what did you hope people would take away from seeing Dan and me on stage together? And how do you see conversations like this shaping the future of missions in Palestine and Israel?
So if you do choose to watch this video with the recap, just know it is not volatile. It is fairly steady and informative. These guys did a beautiful job of telling their own story, and also of maintaining a real Jesus integrity to the topics. And of course, we could only touch on a few things out of the thousands of things anyone may have wanted to hear about. But at any rate, yeah, I think you said symbolic and prophetic. I really believe that people left seeing that it's possible. Both of your stories are dramatic enough that either one of you, and with the influence you have, could just as well have led factions of rebellious, non-Christ-centered movements. But you've chosen to execute your leadership privileges among believers, and then to live it, not just preach it. I think people left that meeting knowing that. But more than that, I think, well, not more than that, but in addition to that, I think people left going, I don't know enough. I'm assuming too much, and I don't know what information to trust anymore. I need to be really selective. I think you guys did a good job of helping to indicate that. And I would say to churches, leaders, do not base your decisions to partner or to serve or to have any opinions. I would almost say, be careful in basing your prayers about the Middle East on what the media presents. It is definitely narrow and sensational. It's better, and this is one of the takeaways for everyone, choose who you align with and learn from them. There's some very, very amazing believers in leadership who have the right information and can guide you, and that's the best place to be. So, yeah, I think it represented something which I think was calming to people, and it helped challenge them to make sure that they know what they should know, not what they find is easily available for knowing. The other part of it is engaging. Go ahead and engage with those that you trust, and being willing to take the time it takes. It's going to be a slow go. Sometimes we get really impatient, but I think people are saying, okay, we will be eager, but patient.
Yes. And I always challenge people and always tell them, don't just talk about Palestinians and Israelis. Talk to us. Don't talk about us. Talk to us. We're here. We're brothers and sisters in Christ. The church is just So beautiful. I mean, it's an indigenous church that survived in the Holy Land, empires and survived invasions and persecution, and it persevered, in the Holy Land for 2,000 years. And we can't just go to the Holy Land to visit the ancient site while missing the living stones. Ancient stones are great and they remind us of great things that happened in the Holy Land, but the living stones are the real story of what God is doing right there in the region. Uh, Brian, I know one of the things closest to your heart is not just measuring activities when it comes to missions, how many trips or how many projects, but measuring transformation. Because at the end of the day, missions is about lives changed, making disciples and people encountering Jesus in ways that mark them forever. Those stories of transformations are what keep many of us, you and me, in this work, even when it's costly or exhausting. So, my question to you is, can you share a story of transformation that captures the power of missions done well?
Mm. Yeah, I've been wondering what would be an easy story to share. And I guess I've been doing this for almost 40 years and I have too many stories and it's hard to go back to
Yes.
one. But what I would like to do is to talk about Philippians 2:14 and 15
Hmm.
as a basis for what I've seen be one of those significant life changers. When I talk about it, it's not the circumstances that matter, it's what you do with them that does. I always have to couch the fact that, well, yes, of course, the circumstances are real and matter, but the key is what do you do with them that does? What comes out of your life in the midst of those circumstances? And Philippians 2:14 and 15 says that you're to do everything without complaining or arguing so that you may become blameless and innocent children of God, above reproach, in the midst of a crooked and depraved generation in which you shine like stars in the universe. We can teach people tactics. We can tell them, oh, you're not supposed to complain. But if we don't include the beauty of all the rest of the scriptural context and Jesus' own teaching style and the Apostle Paul's and all of those, if we leave out the why, it's very difficult for people to continue on or persevere in the command itself. So there's no complaining thing. The reason we do that is so that we can be blameless and innocent. We can
Mm.
appear as children of God. We're so utterly different because we aren't running around complaining, unhappy, opinionated, and all that. So this is one example of a core aspect of how we like to equip and train and mobilize people in mission and how we vet for excellence short-term organizations. Are we giving people the why? It's like a
Mm.
tool so they can be effective in the trade. And I just was on the phone with a donor on Monday, actually. She and her husband had become major donors for us. And she was expressing that particular aspect of preparation for lifestyle ministry. It changed how they raised their kids. Her husband laments a little bit that it had a big effect on him because he used to love to complain, but it's changed who they are and how they function. It changed how they raise their kids, and it's changed how they function in their church. And so I guess I would say the Bible's full of very simple, childlike steps that we can follow with his help to make a difference in how we do mission. And I just want to add this as one important note to what you're asking me about, Ferris, and that is, I may feel like Middle East type ministries are really for the select few, but the truth is most people in the church think missionary work is also still for a
Mm.
select few. It's a little bit bigger swath of people, but maybe 80% in the church, well, we're never going to be called to that. And the fact is, every single one of us is a witness for Jesus. Every one of us in a
Mm.
childlike lifestyle of obedience for the right reasons can be a missionary, if you will,
Right.
wherever we are.
Right.
And it is more complex in the Middle East
Yeah.
because of a lot of dynamics, but really, it's the same everywhere.
Mm. In
So,
so many churches, missions is treated like a department or a
yeah.
program, something optional that a few people, as you said, do while everyone else goes on with their life. But the New Testament paints a very different picture. The church itself exists because it is sent. Uh, you've been a strong voice in reminding the Christians that mission is not for a select few. It's the heartbeat of every believer and every church community. So, what do you do on a practical level at your organization to
Mm.
help churches get to this mindset of missions?
Well, a part of it is to help folks know that this being sent that you just mentioned isn't what for the last 200 years, most of us, well, not that we've been alive that long, but that's sort of the mentality of what mission must be about, is this sent, and it usually means overseas. Helping people in the church understand that opportunities to be engaged in mission and sent, or even cross-cultural, doesn't have to be a lifetime in some other country. It actually can be. In fact, on Friday, I have a meeting about 8 minutes from my house with an inner city ministry that is outside my comfort zone. Talk about cross-cultural. And in a place where
Or even across the street, if
yeah,
why are we talking about reaching people across the world if we cannot win and reach people across the street?
exactly. And it happens behaviorally, not by manipulating conversations and being spiritual giants or flying somewhere having completed 6 years of education. It's life. It's everyday life. So it is true. We are helping church people know it's going, it's sending, it's serving, it's receiving, it's giving. There's a lot of ways we engage in mission, and it should be every day, all the time. And we should see our workplaces as where we're sent.
Yes.
And so we do spend
as
time.
marketplace disciple makers.
Yeah, and that sounds great. Even that sounds like select few again. I just keep saying this: live as a child with biblical obedience, with the power he gives you, with the tools he gives you, the why behind the why. Yes, to be in the marketplace. My gas station, it's a minute and a half away with the lights red, and I'm really praying. These guys, some of them have been there 6 years, and I'm just like, Lord, how am I going to keep getting into their life? Not manipulating, but being a missionary to them, because they long for what everybody else longs for. They don't get it anywhere else except from Jesus. So I got to show them that.
Yes. You've led, trained, and walked alongside leaders for decades, and that's long enough to see what works, what fails, and what truly lasts. So there's a lot of talk today about innovation in missions, and that's important. But sometimes the deepest wisdom comes from those who've stayed the course, learned from mistakes, and discovered what really makes mission fruitful and sustainable. So my question is to you, Brian, is when you look back over the years of serving and ministry and leading and training, what lessons stand out most about what makes missions fruitful and sustainable?
Wow. Discerning fads and vocabulary. I've watched people get on fads and use certain terms, but they all fade. They all have their cycles. And I suppose in many ways they probably are catalysts for some good things. I don't deny that. But you ask what provides the staying power in all of it, and that's relationships, transparent, childlike biblical relationships. No strings attached. To me, that's been the biggest thing. And I think people in this day and age, in fact, at our staff, we talk about the microwave, the hot pot, the crock pot, and the Traeger. Some things we get involved in, they're supposed to be as quick as a microwave, but I'm afraid most people expect microwave behavior out of every activity. If I go on a 2-week mission trip, supposed to plant a church and get everybody saved, well, it's probably more like a Traeger. It takes a lot more time planning, some 4 a.m. stuff, and it sits on the grill for a long time. Relationships. So we can't treat everything as immediate, but treat everything as relational. It's super critical.
Yes. Amen. Well, 10 years ago, I left my full-time job to start reaching people in the Middle East. We started with reaching Arab Americans here in the United States to develop a heart and to get involved in what God is doing in the Middle East. And when we reach young people, we know that the spiritual landscape will change, not just here in this country, but also all around the world. So both of us carry a deep burden for the next generation. And they're growing up in a world of rapid change, digital shifts, political polarization. They're growing up in a world of global crisis, and yet they're calling to follow Jesus into mission. It remains the same. It doesn't change. I often think about how the future of the Great Commission will rise or fall with the way we prepare and empower the next generation of leaders today. So as you look to the next generation of mission leaders, what is your prayer? What is your hope for how they will carry the gospel forward in their time?
I chuckle. It's a big, big topic for me, a big question. Let me give you an illustration. I met with several leaders with a group of young people who wanted to be heard, which is, of course, today, it's no different than when I was young. It's just that now with social media, I guess we feel like we all can be heard and should be heard. I just wanted to be back then. I didn't know how it would be. Now it's an expectation. But they expressed different degrees of anxiety, of oversaturation in media, of fear, of being on the spectrum. And it was all sort of in the context of that's why we're so broken and why we need you to pray with us. And at the end of each of their testimonies, the group of us looked right at them and said, "You just described our childhood. It's the same life I lived. I just didn't have names like mental illness and spectrum." And we had one title for the ones that were a little bit on the edge, but we all suffer. We all go through hard things. And yes, we can say today it's worse than ever, but Sodom and Gomorrah was so bad it got wiped out in a hot flash. So how is it today? I don't know, but we can't keep hiding behind culture, youth as an excuse, or mental illness. You're right. The call is 100% as alive today as it has ever been before. And I do think, here's what I think. We had 5 colleges do a survey. It was predominant that most of the collegiates did not want to go with an organization because they don't trust and they don't want the institutionalization. Those same exact students on the same exact survey said they're afraid of making a mistake and they don't want to be left high and dry, uncared for where they're going. Well, that's why mission institutions exist. So you want one, but you don't. I understand it's a complex time in that sense to navigate too many options, too many opportunities, too many voices. That probably is more than ever before because of the internet, but steady on, be willing to be nimble. You've got young people, great ideas that don't take a lifetime. You don't have to pack your life in a pine box and go by ship for a lifetime to be buried somewhere else in 80 years. You can go and come back, but don't compromise. Use the institutions while they're still there. Even if they're like dinosaurs, they do provide something that will help you. So now that's where it comes back to what we do at MissionWorks. One of our central things is to match you and your special gifting and your experience and your desires with, right now, the organizations that have opportunities specifically outlined. And we have an algorithm in the software that can actually match you with the best fit. That's probably going to be a good pathway, but don't compromise. Don't quit everything and just run off to the field. You do need support and help. So I'm excited. I think more people are being called to the Middle East than ever before, especially young people. There's a lot of hope, a lot of promise, a lot of talent sitting there, and it's not buried under mental illness and anxiety. It's just distracted by it.
Right. And even as church leaders are trying to raise up the next generation behind us, I think we need to have the Paul Timothy mindset, because Timothy was a struggling young man. He had many illnesses, the Bible describes. And, I always joke around when I give this message, when I give this sermon about Paul and Timothy, I said, if Timothy was alive today and he would apply for a missional agency to become a missionary, probably he would get denied right away, because he had physical issues, he had mental health issues, he had so many challenges that would disqualify him to become a missionary. But yet Paul saw something in him that other people didn't see. In 2 Timothy 2:2, he said, whatever you have heard from me, pass it on, entrust it to other people who would raise up other leaders, and the mission will continue, will go on, and the ministry of the church will go on, and the message of the gospel will go forth. So how can we empower young Timothys in our churches and encourage them and come alongside them, because they're the future of the church?
You realize that the Apostle Paul would never have passed the background check when he applied for a mission. I love your example. It's true. These guys that were then the ones that were called and most effective could never have gotten in with our tight systems nowadays. That's good. And I don't know how many of the listeners are in that younger category, but I feel like the tendency for young people, and I did it myself, is to say the old system is so broken, so let's create a new one. And I've learned over the years that the old system wasn't that broken. It was just getting old. And so I would invite you to enter in to spaces where you can influence. You do bring so much to the table. And I sit with agencies, especially what I would consider legacy agencies are the ones that have been around for a long time. And they're saying, we just want young people on our staff. We want young people on our boards. And they just say it all the time, but they don't know where to find them. And even if they do ask, a lot of times they won't say, the younger people won't say yes because it's an old legacy institution. Well, we need help building the bridge between what was and what's becoming. And so be brave, understand yourself, understand the culture, and enter in with the idea that humbly you can and should be there to help influence what's becoming. I just think that's an important message. You've got so much to bring to the table culturally. You also bring a lot of interesting baggage and the immaturity that comes with being young. So how do you lay that alongside those with experience and maturity, but who can't understand the future?
And I hope that also the older generation or the legacy mission organizations and the elders in the church and the pastors would also adopt the spirit of Paul, who empowered Timothy, who, my pastor always says, you empower and then you clean the mess. Because, we understand that the next generation is going to make mistakes. They're not going to really get it right. They lack, just like Timothy, he was young. He didn't have all the wisdom, the experience, the qualification, but yet Paul empowered him and he encouraged him. He said, fan into flames your talent, your skill, your gifting that you have been given by the Lord. Everybody has been given a gift, a unique talent that can impact the gospel and impact the kingdom of God in a way that is so magnificent. But we have to have the Pauls in our lives to empower us and to encourage us. And that's a message that we really need to also champion among pastors and leaders and senior leadership at churches.
I can give you a real life story on that one as well. A week ago Sunday, so about a week and a half ago, I was speaking with a leader who is really struggling with delegation because those who are coming behind don't know how to do it all that well yet. And I said, did you then? And she said, well, actually, no, I didn't. I didn't. And I said, someone had to have trusted you to get it all going. So why don't you trust someone else? And I gave her a phrase that I use a lot in our organization. Nothing you break, we can't together find a way to fix. I would rather you take risks. And I think you're right. Older leaders need to hold on a little looser, not quite so tightly, and make space for failure. And then the young people who are today afraid of failure more than ever before, it seems, according to statistics, don't be. Try things. You don't have to be perfect. We weren't and we still aren't. But you're the key to understanding some of the peculiarities of what lies ahead for us. So come in, make mistakes together. We'll fix it. Let's keep moving forward. And if we're walking in the Lord anyway, the results are going to be profound. It's not all up to you.
Right. And don't look for social media influencers who get it perfect after, filming themselves maybe 10, 15 times, and you just see for the final products that, oh man, how did they do that? It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of practice. It takes to be in it in the long haul. Perseverance, consistency, doing it well over time will sharpen your skills, will give you greater, deeper vision. So just keep on being faithful.
There is a phrase that I use a lot, especially with young people, but I also apply it to myself frequently. Sometimes we trade what we want most for what we want now. What that means is picture yourself at 65, having influenced and been used of the Lord to make a difference in lives in the world, maybe. What does it take to get there? Because sometimes we make choices right now. I eat what I want to eat, do what I want to do, play the game all night that I want to play all night because that's what I want now. And I give up holding steady to the thing that's going to help me be what I want to be most. So,
but it's a very scary thought to think about, imagining yourself at 65. I mean, for a 20-year-old to give them that question.
Scary or not, they should be thinking about that. That's the long view. It's scary as it is, seriously. And I think culturally right now, people look a lot nearer in than maybe that we used to. But I don't know, a lot of my friends never figured out what they wanted to be like. They were 65 and they don't have much of a future and haven't really influenced very many people. So it's better if you do figure a little bit of that out. At least imagine what you want most by the time you're old. So
yes, amen. Well, Brian Heerwagen, I Always enjoy talking to you, my friend. Always inspiring, great insights, great heart behind everything you're doing. Appreciate you so much. Until we meet next time, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Good to talk with you.